My grandmother woke up in the middle of the night one night. Her dog Bear was barking like crazy downstairs in the living room. My grandfather had passed away 5 years ago, so it was just my grandmother and her dog Bear living up in their house in the mountains by themselves. Concerned, she made her way downstairs, checking all the doors and windows just to make sure that everything was locked. It wasn't uncommon for her dog to bark at night. Sometimes the sound of wind and the creakings of the old house startled her. As my grandmother checked the front door, the back windows, the back door, she told her dog Bear to calm down. There was nothing to be afraid of. It was just them. When she checked the last window that was behind a curtain, she pulled the curtain back and saw that the window was wide open. Standing there was a man dressed in a full-blown clown costume, trying to climb in. He had a demented smile on him, and he said, "Time to play." My grandmother screamed that she had a gun and she would use it. She sprinted to her coat closet, pulled out the gun, and went back to the window. But when she got there, the man in the clown costume was gone. My grandmother no longer lives by herself. She and her dog Bear moved in with us full-time after this incident happened. My family was so thankful that Bear was barking in the middle of the night and sensed the danger. If Bear had not warned my grandmother about the man trying to sneak in, who knows what would have happened. I was lucky enough to live in a large house when I was a kid. My father was a physical therapist. My house had a side room towards the back side of the first floor. My siblings called it the second living room, because that's basically what it was. It had an old recliner, a small table, and a mid-sized couch. That's it. We hardly ever sat in there. One morning, I woke up sick. I told my mom, and she told me to take the day off from school and stay home. My siblings had to be at school, and my parents worked, so that meant that I had the house to myself. I laid around in bed for a few hours, until around 10:30 a.m., when I heard steady walking coming from my first floor. I thought nothing of it at first, as I just assumed maybe my mom went in late like she does sometimes. I needed something to eat anyway, so I stood up and went downstairs to the kitchen. I made it about 3 feet in front of my kitchen's walk-in doorway when I locked eyes with, not my mom, but a 6-foot-tall man wearing raggy and ripped-up clothes. I was frozen in fear. I just stood there. It was only for a few seconds, but it felt like hours had passed. The guy just stood there and watched me too. No expression or anything. I eventually pulled myself out of the shock and bolted from my bedroom upstairs. I did not hear him following me, but I got into my bedroom, locked the door, and moved my dresser in front of it. I pulled out my phone, and instead of calling 911 like I should have done, I called my mom. I screamed into the phone, telling her someone was in the house trying to kill me. She told me not to leave my room for any reason and call the police, so I did. 15 minutes later, the police finally showed up, as I could see them through my bedroom window. I watched them enter the house before I left my room to run down to them for safety. I told them everything that happened. They did a quick search of my house and found nothing. Not a single person or broken window or door. My parents both came home shortly after and were absolutely furious that the guy was not caught. I was extremely angry as well, but also relieved that I was alive. The police began packing their things, but as one of the last officers was on the way out, he noticed a Walmart bag sticking out from under our couch. It was that damn couch in the side room, and well, what do you know? We found hundreds of trash bags and week-old rotting food under the couch, along with some other personal items like wipes, water bottles, and even a bag of piss. A fucking bag of piss. Whoever that man was in the kitchen had been living under our couch for weeks. I can't comprehend how none of our family members smelt any of the garbage that was piled up under there the entire time. The fact that he never made a single noise under there also baffles the hell out of me. We've since cleaned that room out completely and turned it into a breakfast nook with wooden chairs, so no more shitheads can break in and find free housing in them. I go off to college in a few months, so I won't have to live in fear of that incident happening again much longer. But I still think about it every time I wake up with a cough. I live at the top of a 14-story apartment building. I live alone and was playing Call of Duty with some friends online when I got an alert on my cell phone that a massive thunderstorm was coming. I looked out my window and heard the distant rumble of thunder. That's when I remembered that my car windows were rolled down. Annoyed that I had to stop playing my game, I grabbed my keys that were on my kitchen counter and made the long walk down my apartment building. My car was parked in the back of the complex by the dumpsters in the woods. When I got outside, I started to jog quickly over to my car as rain was beginning to fall already. All 4 windows of my car were rolled down. I opened my driver's side door and started to roll them up one by one. As I was doing this, I heard a loud noise coming from one of the dumpsters. I didn't really pay attention because I figured it was just some kids playing around, or maybe an animal that got stuck in the dumpster. As I was rolling up the last window, that's when I noticed a man coming out of the dumpster. He seemed to be talking to himself. He was extremely dirty, and my first instinct was that this guy was definitely homeless. By accident, when I finished rolling up my windows, I shut my driver's side door a little too hard, and it made a loud noise. The man who was crawling out of the dumpster stopped and looked directly at me. We stared intensely at each other for a few seconds. I took one step back, and when I did, the homeless man started to sprint directly at me. He was making this weird animalistic noise, and he had his hands straight up in the air like he was a bear or something. I turned around and sprinted back to my complex. I shut the door and slid the lock across it. I could hear the man violently banging on the door, screaming at the top of his lungs. I sprinted back up to my apartment and locked that door as well. By this time, it was pouring rain and thundering outside. I looked out my window and at the parking lot and the dumpsters, but I did not see the man anywhere. Nothing ever came of this, but believe me when I say, I had gotten no sleep that night. Me and my best friend shared an apartment on the outskirts of Philadelphia. For some context, we're both female and we were 21 when this happened. My best friend, and I'll call her Bree, was coming home late from work one night. I was in our living room watching a movie when Bree sprinted through our front door and then locked it. She looked very concerned, and I asked her what was wrong. She explained that 2 men dressed in all black followed her from her car up to our front door. As she was explaining this, there was suddenly a knock on our front door. Terrified, Bree and I both looked out our peephole and saw a man standing there in all black. We held our breaths, careful not to make any noise. After 5 tense minutes of staying silent, the man on the other side of the door called us both by our names and said that he knows we're in there and to come out right now. Terrified by the fact that this man knew who we were, I pulled out my cell phone and silently dialed 911. I could hear the dispatcher saying, "911, what's your emergency?" We didn't dare say a word to the dispatcher, and after another 5 tense minutes, the man in all black walked away from our front door. And what was even more disturbing was that from the side of our house, we saw a second man dressed in all black also leave. This creeped us out. When we finally thought that the coast was clear, I resumed the phone call with the dispatcher. I told them the situation was handled, but the dispatcher insisted on sending a unit out there just in case. When the officer got to our apartment, we made a statement and gave them all the information that we possibly could. My roommate and I have no idea who the two men were, and we have no idea how they knew both of our names. Since this happened, we've had no other disturbances, and I pray that it stays that way.